Welcome to Grand Sumo Breakdown,
the unofficial sumo podcast
for official sumo fans. Welcome to Grand Sumo Breakdown. This is Jake.
This is Mac.
And we are here joined by the U.S. light heavyweight reigning champion, the first place qualifier for Worlds in light heavyweight. I'm probably missing a handful of things, but at least within the USA sumo coverage career of Grand Sumo Breakdown, the undefeated Andrew Roden. How are you doing today, Andrew?
Pretty good. How are y'all doing?
We're doing great.
Yeah,
we're happy to have you here. We've seen you a couple times. Never, like I said, never seen you lose, but we've seen you wrestle a bunch of times.
Literally.
But yeah, so you won in Austin for nationals, and now you're going to Worlds. How are you preparing for Worlds, by the way? Why don't we start there?
It's a process. I focus on the whole process. So mainly my training, because here in Alabama, nobody else does sumo. So mainly I focus on strength and conditioning. I think that, and I don't know, some people may disagree, but I think that's one of my attributes out there in the dojo. So I focus on it and just keeping my mind right. Visualization is something that's been proven to be very effective with similar benefits to actually physically training. So I'll use some visualization and stuff as far as sumo, thinking about what I'm going to do and game planning and stuff like that. And then when I get a chance, practice. And most commonly that has been going down to Panama City and practicing with Cornelius, Jordan, and Eric, Brandon McLeod, down with Florida Sumo. So those guys have been crucial. People will talk about my success, but those guys have been unbelievably crucial to that success. So I practice with them a lot. And moving forward now with the being on the U.S. national team, I'm sure that'll change because I know they're talking about doing some training camps and stuff like that. So
yeah, that'll be great.
Now, I have heard you referred to as Alabama. You're not officially tied to any particular club. I know you just mentioned the Florida club, but right. You're known throughout the community as Alabama. How did that start?
That started. That started thanks to Justin Kizzert.
Okay.
When I went to my first tournament in San Antonio, the Texas Sumo Classic, that had been September of 2020. Anyways, I was a new guy on the scene. It was my first sumo tournament, and actually Justin, for probably about my first year in sumo, called me Arkansas.
Oh, Arkansas.
So, yeah. And I'm a pretty laid back guy, so I just rolled with it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's too late to correct it now, right?
Exactly.
right. And so that became a thing. And then I think it was maybe at nationals, I got talking with Justin, and he's like, "Wait, you're actually from Alabama?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Why have I been calling you Arkansas?" I'm like, "Shit, I don't know."
That's on you, man.
Wait, how much sake have you been having, Justin? Come on, man.
So then it became Alabama. And
okay.
Yeah. That's funny. So yeah, there isn't like a club like Florida Sumo. There isn't you don't have like the network that the Texas guys have. What actually brought you to the sport? What kind of like where'd you get your athletic beginnings, and how'd that lead to down this crazy niche road that we've all ended up down?
So I started wrestling in 7th grade. Started in a youth. I grew up in Carrollton, Georgia, which is in the metro Atlanta area, about 45 minutes west of downtown. And so got into youth wrestling. Had a couple of great youth wrestling coaches that have turned into lifelong mentors, John and Cliff Harris. They had a very physical, hard-nosed style of wrestling. They were originally from New Jersey. They wrestled in college. Cliff wrestled at West Point. Was a 2-time NCAA qualifier for West Point. And I don't know how much y'all are familiar with like the folk style wrestling scene with high school and college here in America, but
not all that great.
They had what was called the Iowa style of wrestling.
Oh.
And Iowa has its own style of wrestling. And folks,
yes, it does.
Mainly derived from wrestling calves and pigs and whatnot.
Well, yeah, kind of.
Well,
as it shows on my shirt, it's like, yep, I'm an Iowa kid.
We're from Iowa. We can make fun of Iowa.
Yes.
Right. Well, you're not too far off, because it stems from Dan Gable, who is the wrestling equivalent to Michael Jordan, and my college coach was best friends with Dan Gable, or still is best friends with Dan Gable.
Right
so
on.
I know some stories. So you're talking about wrestling pigs and livestock and various stuff.
Well,
you're not too far off from how the Iowa style got started.
The stereotypes exist for a reason.
Yeah, that's about to say. I can't deny those.
So my college coach, he used to I remember one day, just to give you an example of the Iowa mentality of wrestling. We wanted to get this, it was off season. We were wanting to get in the weight room and do some training, me and some teammates, and it was locked. So we went to coach's office, and he was busy doing something. And Coach Doug Moses, we call him Coach Mo, salty old guy, but I mean, salt of the earth type though. Like, but if I had to compare him to anybody, you might know, he's like Mick from Rocky. He was an old, sort of gnarled up, just full of piss and vinegar type guy.
Oh yeah, nope. That's an Iowa type guy.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Raspy voice and everything. So we go to the office and we're like, "Hey, coach, can we get the keys to get in the weight room?" He's like, he takes his glasses off and he's like, "Oh, what the fuck? Y'all fucking need the weight room for? Y'all always fucking need something. Y'all fucking need to get in the weight room. We need to get in the weight room and lift weights. Fuck, let me tell you what we used to do back in my day. Me and Gable, we would just go find a sturdy tree branch. Find a sturdy tree branch. You did pull-ups, so you couldn't do pull-ups anymore. You go find a big rock or something. You pick the shit up overhead. you get tired of doing that, and then you go run. And
I'm getting so many flashbacks from high school.
And even went on to tell us that him and Gable used to take coffee cans and buckets and stuff, fill them with Quikrete, put broomsticks in them, and that's how they used to make their weights.
Yeah, no, cinder blocks. Cinder blocks is how we used to do it.
Yeah, that's funny.
Same kind of deal. That's why I'm like, oh my God, I'm back in high school. It's like, we had cinder blocks. We just put a broomstick between this and that's what we lifted.
Exactly. So that was a lot of my college training. But so back to the original topic. So John and Cliff had that hard-nosed mentality. And that transition to high school, my high school coach, Mike Mason, he was a Marine Corps vet. He didn't wrestle in college or anything, but he had that Marine Corps mentality, so he was all about being physical and tough. So ended up in college wrestling for Coach Mo. Man, had the time of my life. The guy, he's in the National Wrestling Hall of Fame. He's in the Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference Hall of Fame. He's in the Colorado State Pueblo Hall of Fame. I mean, he's a legend in the sport. But maybe not a commonly known name, but if you know him, everybody who knows him has a ton of respect for him. So went there, I wrestled at New Mexico Highlands University, which is Division II school in the Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference. And at the time, I don't know much about it anymore, but at the time, the RMAC was one of the toughest conferences in the country. It was definitely the toughest Division II conference. And of course, the Big Ten, the EIWA, the Big 12, obviously those were tougher conferences, but the RMAC used to be buzzsaw. And to give you an example, there's been 2 UFC champions that have came out of the RMAC. Shane Carwin and Marty Usman.
Cool.
Both have came out of the RMAC. So that's just sort of the culture of competing there. So fell in love with competing and all that. So graduated college and just got out of athletics. Got fat and out of shape, ate all the foods that I never got to eat and everything, thinking I would never get fat because, I'd always been skinny, right?
Oh yeah.
So,
I have no idea what that's like. None at all. No idea.
So I lived my best life for about 9 years. And so how I ended up getting into sumo, I had a buddy one day, had to go down to Birmingham and pick some stuff up. I live in the Huntsville area, which is about an hour and a half north of Birmingham. And so he says, "Hey, you want to ride down to Birmingham with me? I gotta pick some stuff up." And it's sort of funny because to me, I don't try to push religion or anything on other people, but I'll tell my story. And to me, this is how it's funny how God works, because I almost didn't go with my buddy down on this trip, but it was because I just didn't feel like leaving the house. But it was one of those things I said, "Shit, I got nothing else to do."
Sure.
So I rode with him. We go down to Birmingham. And what's funny, so we get off the interstate, we went to the store he had to go to. As we're leaving, we didn't go the same way back to the interstate. We took surface streets more up through Birmingham back to the interstate, and we passed the city limit sign. And at the city limit sign, of course, this is like January 2020. It said, Birmingham city limits, home of the 2021 World Games.
Yep.
And
okay.
So that's why I'm saying, like, it's sort of funny how God works,
That's incredible. Yeah, like
just serendipitous, unbelievable.
Yeah,
serendipity.
Thank you. Great word for that.
Yeah,
just
because
out of nowhere.
Because had I never went on this trip with him, I'd have never known. Y'all would never know who I am. And had we taken the same way back to the interstate that day,
right?
I mean, we wouldn't be having this interview. Yeah. So we see this, and me and him start laughing and joking, and we're like, we know what the Olympics are, and we're like, what's the World Games? Now, nothing against World Games, but being in Birmingham doesn't offer it much credibility.
Right.
True.
Point number one is kind of against it. Yeah.
Because I don't know how much y'all know about Alabama. Most people don't know a lot. Birmingham is a shithole.
I only know the Huntsville area. I don't know Birmingham, but I know Huntsville.
Birmingham is like consistently the number 3 most dangerous city in the country.
Oh man.
Like, it's like, when I say it's crazy, I bet. So since they've taken on the World Games, they've actually started policing the city and trying to clean it up.
Sure.
And I would say, so in the past 2 years, they've probably had like 24 police officers get shot, and they probably had 6 or 7 get killed.
Because they're trying to step things up so much and just
right, because violent crime and gang activity is just so out of control.
Right. Wow.
That so that's Birmingham.
so when somebody says we're bringing this world-renowned thing to Birmingham that you haven't heard of, it's not exactly encouraging.
Right. Like Birmingham's a city of about 250,000 people, and it's not uncommon for them to have 120 murders in a year.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, it's wild. So anyway, so back to the story. So we see this, and we're like, what are the events of this? Like, we just think, it's in Birmingham. We're like, was like jumping fences, running from the police, like shooting dice, like
cow tipping, right?
right. Like, what are we doing here? So for about half the ride back to Huntsville, I jump on Google. I start Googling it, and I'm like, oh shit, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, right on.
I start seeing all the sports, and I'm like, wow, like you see there's some very unique offshoots of popular sports like korfball and inline hockey and stuff like that. And then there's a lot of sports that you got judo, jiu-jitsu, gymnastics, archery, powerlifting,
weird stuff. Right?
Yeah,
it's
like off, not Olympics, but just leveled
niche.
down.
Maybe niche would be a better word.
I didn't want to be the first one to say it, but yes, you had a lot of weird sports.
Yeah.
and then you had a lot of sports that are very, like, if they were on the Olympic ballot, everybody would be like, oh, that makes sense. Like jiu-jitsu's in the Olympics, sumo's in the Olympics. Like when I tell people sumo has never been in the Olympics, they actually are pretty surprised. So anyway, so I see this, and so I'm scrolling through the list, and I'm like, oh man, I'll have to come down and watch this. This will be cool. And I see sumo, and I'm like, oh man, that'd be awesome. So at first I'm thinking as a spectator.
Sure.
So I click on it because I'm thinking it's going to be complicated, a lot of rules and all this. So I start trying to learn about it.
It's simple.
Right.
I mean, technically, yeah.
So I start learning about it and everything, and watching some videos, and over the few weeks, that sort of transitions to oh shit, I can be good at this. This
lines up really well with your background.
All right.
Yeah.
So you got a wrestling background, like this makes sense.
Right. And not only the wrestling background, but that Iowa mentality of wrestling, that hard-nosed, very physical, in-your-face type wrestling.
Oh, yeah.
And as far as athletically, I was always powerful and explosive. So I was like, oh man, I really think my skill. So I talked to like some old coaches, old teammates, and all of them were like, they watch some videos and they're like, dude, you're going to transition into that really well. And so about May of COVID hit, gyms and everything closed down. So in May of 2020 is sort of when things started to open up in Alabama. And I got in with the gym, Godspeed here. So you'll probably see me wearing the shirts and stuff at tournaments. They do great stuff. They do athletic training. They train like the group athletes I work out with are professional baseball players. They have a location down in the Birmingham area where they train NFL players, and they do adult fitness classes too. So that the whole gamut. They have a physical therapy clinic with doctors of physical therapy, and so it's just a great setup. But coming from the athletic background, I understood the importance of getting in with good strength and conditioning coaches, especially at the time I was 31. So being a little bit older, I was like, oh, I need to do this right way, or I'm gonna hurt myself. Especially because I was so out of shape and everything. So, so I got in with them, and it's funny. I told him first phone call. I spoke to Dr. Jared Dowling, who's a physical therapist here in Huntsville, and he's the director of the Godspeed Gym in Huntsville. I told him in the first phone conversation, I'm getting in sumo wrestling, and he didn't laugh or snicker. I mean, he's like, oh, okay. I was like, I want to get into it. I said, at the time I was about 320 pounds. I said, and at the time I originally wanted to drop back down to my old wrestling weight, which would have been lightweight for sumo, but because of the scheduling stuff, just I didn't have the way things have played out.
A lot, yeah.
I'm trying to imagine you as a lightweight right now. I'm like, oh my God, he would destroy everything.
Well, that was the original plan, but with the way COVID messed up the scheduling and qualification criteria, and all this, it's just 253 is just where I'm at, and it's nice not cut. It's nice being eating and being big, strong, So
you're still in the light heavy. You're not heavyweight technically, but
right.
You're right in between.
So anyway, I told him basically my plan is I want to lose weight, sort of get my athleticism back, and I told him then I said, so I think I can be the national champion. I said, and that'll qualify me for the world championships. I said, and by this time I knew the World Games were coming in 2022. And to Birmingham, and I told him that, and I said I want to qualify for the World Games, and I said, and I'm the type of person. If I show up to compete, I show up to compete to win. I said, so I want to win the World Games in 2022. And he said, all right. And man, we hammered down. We put the accelerator down. We've never looked back.
Awesome.
Had you said this earlier, I'd have been like, well, that's a clever boast. But saying it now, seeing you compete after you've done everything, I'm like, no, that was just a matter of fact. It's like, no, he did it.
It was a done deal.
Exactly.
Right. Well, that's one thing too, where my education has benefited me because I got my master's in psychology. I'm getting my PhD in psychology, and you have to speak things into reality. It's important to find that balance between cockiness and confidence. You don't want to be cocky, but confidence is important. And you got to speak things into reality. So I knew that when I started talking to him. So I made no issue about what my goals were. And so far I've spoken into reality. So hopefully that keeps going. And I hopefully when people hear that, they know anything I say, I'm not trying to be cocky. I'm just trying to get myself there. So
yeah, exactly.
So which was your first tournament? What was your grand debut onto the sumo scene?
Yeah. And how did you hear about the community to get there?
Exactly.
I will say that was sort of the challenge. That was the toughest part of getting in sumo, was figuring out how to get into sumo. Now, I don't know what the solution to that is. But I think that's the powers that be in the U.S. sumo community should think about. And I think, and don't get me wrong, I think, there's a lot of efforts being made and a lot of ideas being thrown out there. There's a lot of people doing great things to promote the sport and grow the sport. Y'all are a perfect example of that.
Thank you.
So things are happening, but it's just, like I said, that was the toughest thing. Well, I found the tournament in the Texas Sumo Classic in San Antonio. And so that was my first tournament. I ordered a Mawashi. I hadn't done the first lick of sumo training. Actually, I don't even think I hadn't even wrestled at all. I hadn't even went back and done any folk style wrestling, anything. I went into that completely cold. I showed up with an unfolded Mawashi. Still had the cardboard from where in the center of it from where it was shipped.
So I'm sure you caught plenty of grief for that.
Yes, I come in and I'm like, well, see, I had no clue so I walk in and I sort of realize I'm looking at my unfolded Mawashi and I'm like, oh, like this definitely isn't like there's more to this.
Yeah.
And it's funny because so that's when I met Tom Zabel, I met Caleb Backus, Justin Kizert, Sam Kempka, Eros.
You met all the big guns right off the bat. It was like everybody that you just named is well known on the USA sumo circuit.
And let me tell you, man, they welcomed me with open arms. And it was so great. It was so refreshing. And I think that's one thing that's great. And that's a tangent. Maybe we get off here in a minute. But what's great about the US sumo community, I come in and everybody sort of chuckles like, God, this guy's washi isn't even folded. But they showed me how to do it. They showed me how to do the ring entry, and and so they showed me sort of that basic stuff. They showed me how to tie the mawashi on, and so I stepped in the ring and I went 10-0 that day. I picked up 2 wins over Sam and a win over Justin, and I think maybe 1 or 2 wins over Caleb. So
this was the 2020 Sumo Classic, right? The Texas Sumo Classic.
Correct. Yeah, I think it was in September of 2020.
Yep, that's the one that was your debut that that we were starting to watch.
Yeah,
and I remember writing everything down, going, "Who is this guy?"
And so was everybody there, apparently.
Apparently, yes. I didn't realize I was in the majority of that.
That's one thing that caught my attention during the tournament. So when I first get there, everybody was more than willing to help me, to show me things and whatever. Well, after about my first couple of matches, I turn around and look, and now all of a sudden the Texas people are huddled up coaching each other on how to beat me.
They're staring at you going, "Ah, crap."
Okay, we were nice for a minute, but what's going on?
And you can tell they're coaching each other up, and I'm like, I'm the new guy. What's this? Like, coach me, But it's just, so it's pretty funny. But it was a great experience, and I have a ton of respect for all those people. They're all great people, and that's what's great about the U.S. Sumo community. We're all competitive, but I mean, we all get along. We hate to lose to each other, but at the end of the day, we realize we're also sort of a brotherhood. So,
yeah. And you mentioned you train sometimes with the Florida guys. Was that just via mutual connection there? They pointed you to somebody closer, or how'd you get in touch with them?
Cornelius reached out to me. I'm not sure. I would assume maybe Justin, but it was I think a few months after the Texas Sumo Classic. Cornelius texted me. Said, "Hey, I got your number for somebody in Texas." And of course, I knew who Cornelius was, because as soon as you start learning about the U.S. Sumo scene,
he's one of those top names. Yep.
You learn who's who.
Right. So, so he reached out and he's like, "Hey, I run the team down in Florida." I'm like, "Oh yeah, I know who you are. I've seen some of your videos and stuff." And so he reached out. "Hey, we're not too far away. We'd be interested in training with you." Blah blah blah. So, so it set some stuff up from there moving forward. So I went down to Orlando to the little seminar that Cornelius put on at Iron Life with Karinga. Was that April of 2021. So went down there and wrestled with them for a weekend and got to meet the other or actually, I think that was my first time meeting any of the Florida guys. So got to meet them all at once. And of course, they're all great guys too. And, had a good weekend of training. And now I've been down to Panama City a few times since then to work with Cornelius and Jordan, Eric, and Brandon.
That's really cool. Yeah, within 6 months, you're already in with 2 of the 3 big hubs. That's really awesome.
Exactly. And that's what, like I said, that's what's great about the U.S. Sumo community. I mean, they could have cut my throat from the beginning. I mean, honestly, they could have, oh, we're not gonna have anything to do with this guy. He's from Alabama. There's no club there. Just,
Yeah.
Nuts to him.
Yeah, and they didn't. And they welcomed me in, and, it's been great for me. And, I'm extremely grateful. So that's what's great about the community.
100%. Yeah, I think it's my working hypothesis is it's too small to be a dick to anybody, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
When you come across somebody that's got this same weird niche hobby as you there's
right.
Particularly when you kick everybody else's ass, and it's like, okay, all right, we want you on our team. Come on.
But speaking of being on our team, it's you compete against each other, and all the way up until Vegas, it was, compete against the other guys in the U.S. But now that we're past the qualifiers, we're all Team USA.
Right.
We're all on one team here. So what are you doing in preparation for the World Games? What plans do you know that are out there between now and July when that happens?
So I think what's in the works is Soslan, who I'm sure y'all know about him.
Yep.
He was pro sumo in Japan and lives in Orlando now, and he's getting into the US sumo scene, trying to offer a lot of help. So in February, I think he's holding a couple of day seminar. So a bunch of us are planning on going down there to train with him. It's my understanding he has a clay dojo, which the worlds are on clay, so that's important. And then there's been we have a group text, and they've talked about some tournaments and some other potential training camps and stuff like that. So just sort of trying to get it all figured out right now when we can meet up and when we can train. And,
Sure.
if nothing else works out, I'll end up down in Panama City working with Cornelius, Jordan, and Eric. So, and Brandon.
Yeah,
that's a good group. I mean, if anything, that's an excellent group to get some practice with.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, we've heard from Karinga as well that those guys down there looking to try and incorporate more of the Southeast, get a little bit more outreach.
Right.
So yeah, you mentioned you weren't really sure like what's the solution? How do you get more people into sumo? That's something that I know a couple other guys have been talking about. What kind of things, like, sorry to go off on a sub question here, but one of the guys that gave you the most trouble in Vegas was also a newbie who came from college wrestling, right? That was Jordan, the guy that
right.
He didn't beat you, but he probably gave you one of your tougher matches. But
right.
That was one of my.
Go ahead,
no, I was going to say that was one of the favorite photos that I've got from our time there being in Vegas. Was us, just that perfect shot of you and him just locked in the clinch and us going, oh, like, what's going to happen?
Yeah, help me remember after we're done recording. I don't know if that photo got public other than one there on Instagram.
I don't think I've seen it. So
well, we'll have to get it out there then.
Yes, we will have to get
my
it
wife
out there.
took a picture right in the middle of that gold medal match. It was spectacular.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Gotcha.
We'll
Cool.
get it out there. But yeah, so he was in a similar boat to you. He's a
Right.
big wrestler and just kind of heard about it and was like, what the hell? I'll give it a shot.
Right.
What just from what you know about like the wrestling scene in high school and college, how do you think there could be how do you think we could pique the interest of people younger to give it a try?
I don't know. Because folk style is the wrestling style here in America. Now I have talked with a guy in Georgia from my hometown, a guy by the name of Matt Young. He runs a charity organization, helping kids and stuff, and helping them in all aspects of life. But wrestling's part of that because I'm sure, as y'all know, I mean, wrestling parallels life. So he's talked to me about maybe wanting to come over and show some of these young kids about sumo and some stuff like that. So, that's a potential opportunity. And I think it's going to happen with getting more people with the folk style wrestling background involved. People like me and Jordan, because I listened to Sumo and Saki with Justin and Caleb a couple of weeks ago.
Our new rival.
Yes.
Curse them.
And,
Caleb.
I heard them talking about, Jordan is planning on getting the UNLV guys to start doing some sumo, I guess, in their off season and stuff.
I
so
would
just
love that.
just stuff like that. I think you got to have guys that can reach out into that folk style wrestling community and make people aware. And like I tell everybody, I'm like, it's the perfect sport for a former wrestler.
Sure.
Because it's all the fun, right? It's all the fun, but it's short goes. You're not grinding out a 7-minute match.
Well, and you're not taking them to the mat. You're not trying to reverse it. I mean, the second you go down to the mat, game over.
Yeah.
That's it.
So
you're done.
So it's not as hard on the knees and the hips. Like it's just, but it's the fun. You get to hit, you get to bang, and then it's over. You're not grinding out a long match. So, I just think I think maybe that's what it would take to maybe get more youth involved.
Sure. Yeah, we'll keep you in mind. We'll get you up here whenever we get a demo set up at one of the colleges or something.
Awesome.
One of our silly pipe dreams of getting more sumo interest.
Hey, well, maybe. So one of my good friends, he wrestled at Northern Iowa. So
yeah.
Oh, you and I?
Yeah, Taylor Lujan.
Right
I don't know if y'all know that name. Anyways, he was man, great kid. I've known him since he was 6th or 7th grade when he first got into wrestling. And I watched him grow up. He's a one-of-a-kind human being, an absolute workhorse, a good person. He won the Super 32 tournament as a senior in high school. He was a 4-time Georgia State champ. I think he went undefeated all 4 years, or he may have lost one match.
Holy cow!
Sure. That's awesome.
Went to UNI and took a redshirt year and was always up in the top of the national rankings, but fell just short of All-American every year. And then his senior year, man, he's number 1 in the country. He had kicked the shit out of everybody else ranked in the top 10. I mean, there's just no doubt in my mind. I'm like, he's going to be the NCAA champion this year. He wins the Big 12s, goes into the NCAA as the number 1 seed. COVID hits, boom, done. So anyways, but now he was the 2021 U.S. Senior National Champion freestyle. So that's his, so now he's pursuing his dreams of being a world and Olympic champion.
Well, hey,
anyways,
you plant that sumo seed in his brain. We'll see where that goes.
Yeah, I was gonna say, come on.
He thinks it's pretty cool. And I went and I hung out with him some over Christmas, and I told him, I was like, hey, well, you can always try sumo.
Hey,
you're good friends with like the best guy in the division. So
you know some people, they've got some connections.
Right, exactly. So
oh, that's funny. Well, yeah. One other thing I wanted to bring up before we go, I was you had an Instagram post recently where you mentioned your family has quite a history, especially down in the South there. And you mentioned like what what an inspiration that is having family that have gone through American history. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So it was my great grandfather. I think it was, times 8. I'm not 100% sure. Or I can't remember off the top of my head. Yeah. I was one of the original settlers of Jamestown. And
wow.
He he survived all the hardships that they had to endure. A lot of them died off that first winter and everything. And so, he survived all that, and our family continued on for a few more generations. Don't know a whole lot about between him and my great grandfather times 4, but he fought in the Revolutionary War, and he was from South Carolina. He fought in the Revolutionary War and survived. And after the Revolutionary War, the government paid him with some land in what is now known as Alabama. So that's how my family ended up in Alabama.
Because
the name Alabama suddenly means a little bit more now.
Yeah.
It's more of a badge of honor. But that was like the frontier at the time, right?
Right, exactly. So that's what's pretty cool about
out west to Alabama.
Yes, as I said, the frontier, as you said.
Right. So that's what's pretty cool about wrestling on Team USA is having family history that's tied to the founding of our country and being able to represent our country in international competition. It's a pretty cool experience. So
yeah. No, that's awesome. Hopefully we can have Jamestown settler, Revolutionary War fighter, world sumo champion. Then a couple more generations they'll be like, yeah, my great grandfather was the United States sumo champion.
Right, exactly.
There you go. There's another notch on the the family crest.
Right.
Now, not only that, you said you have your master's, now your PhD. What is that? Are you currently pursuing that? Are you continuing? Tell us a little bit more about that. What's that in?
So I'm at the end of my first year of my PhD. I'm getting my PhD in psychology with a concentration in performance. So it's closely aligned with sports psychology. And
right on.
So if you follow me on Instagram, for anybody listening, it's at Stonewall_Roden. So throw that out there real quick. But that's why you'll see some of my posts and stuff where I get into the mental aspects of, sometimes I'll get into mental aspects of various things in life, but you'll see me talk a lot about the mental side of sport. And so I have, I'm not an expert yet, still got a couple of years to go, but I have a pretty solid understanding of what I'm talking about and everything. And writing my dissertation, you show up. That's one thing about getting the PhD. First day of class, year 1, day 1, they say you need to start working on your dissertation now if you want to graduate on time. And you're like, oh, this isn't like a master's thesis where you can just write it in the last 6 months.
I was about to say, like, here's everything I've been doing. Here are all my classes. Here's the progress. And blah.
Yeah. And, I'm like, oh, I know it's a big paper. Well, then you find out it's actually a book that you have to write. The template for the dissertation is 148 pages. So, and there's chapters. I mean, it's a big task. So your first year is spent identifying your research gap. So you have to find something that emerges from the existing literature that has not been explored in your field yet. So sort of what I've landed on, and I've supported pretty well is the experience of flow states and clutch states in short duration, high pressure athletes. So
you're over my head, man. You're over my head. You dumb it down.
What I understood of it is how to do a sumo match mentally. Yeah, it's kind of what that sounded like to me, right?
Let's bring it down just a little.
Yeah, that's a good simple version of it. But yeah, flow states are an optimal state of psychological performance with physiological components. And a clutch state is a similar phenomenon that occurs in a choking moment. So optimal performance within a choking moment. So research has shown that athletes can experience flow states and clutch states in the same performance, but they do not experience them simultaneously. So as I've went through all the literature and done all my research, what seems to be interesting, so what I've termed, the short duration, high pressure athletes like sumo wrestlers or a closing pitcher in baseball, a pinch hitter in baseball, a field goal kicker in football, because it's all very similar, right? In how the sport, how your specific position is
a very short moment of very high pressure.
Yes. Individual performance with a high pressure scenario.
Right. And so what sort of has emerged or seems to be emerging, of course, this is where I'm going to conduct my research, is how do they experience flow and clutch? Because it's such a short moment that, it's a clutch moment, but at the same time, you're also aware, and there's criteria. I won't go too far down the rabbit hole, but there's criteria. There's 5 qualifying criteria of what meets a clutch state that's been discovered. Well, in sumo and these types of high pressure, short duration athletes, you're aware of the criteria for a clutch performance outside of your athletic performance. So when you're warming up and you may be entering a state of flow or you're entering a state of clutch, but then, so that's sort of something that hasn't been discovered in research, is experiencing clutch as a prolonged phenomenon. Mm-hmm. So do athletes like us experience something unique, or is it some type of combination of the two? Okay. So that's sort of where my dissertation is going at this point. And the way I'm presenting it and what seems to be best suited so far by feedback from the faculty is presenting it through a qualitative methodology. If that makes any sense.
So physically kicking ass, mentally kicking ass, and then explaining how you're kicking ass in both states. Like, all right.
It sounds like you got a solid field of research coming up here. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I sort of get everything, I sort of got everything working for me, and hopefully I can keep it going. So
yeah. No, that's super interesting. I'm definitely looking forward to you conducting research on the Russians in July.
Yeah. See, that's where I got to represent Coach Mo, and I got to beat the Russians, so he wrestled on Team USA in freestyle back in his heyday, and he won the Tbilisi tournament in Georgia, which, if you know anything about that, especially back then, that was recognized as probably the toughest tournament in the world.
Are we talking like the 80s, 90s or something?
Yeah, we're talking back in the 70s.
Oh, okay.
And it was back during
the Soviet. Look that up.
It was back during the Soviet Union era. And it was used to be considered so tough because you'd have the guys from all those Soviet countries, that didn't necessarily get to compete in the Olympics because there was only one guy. So all those guys competed in Tbilisi, and he won that tournament, and which is pretty cool. He's talked to me about his time in the Soviet Union and wrestling in tournaments over there. And of course, being a Cold War era athlete, there's a lot of fire in his stomach for the Russians,
sure.
So very, very Rocky-esque feeling.
I can imagine.
It's kind of funny. It's come full circle that they're like, probably are the, one of the favorite countries that we can kind of just recycle that whole Rocky mentality, right?
Yep.
Exactly.
Oh, that's funny. Well, you already mentioned it real quick, but Instagram's where you mainly hang out. Why don't you give us that handle one more time, where people can find you if they want to get in touch?
It's at Stonewall Roden. That's Stonewall, STONEWALL _ Roden, RODEN.
Excellent.
And you can follow me on there. I try to post some funny stuff if you think it's funny. If not, whatever, I think it's funny. And then I'll post stuff about sumo, the World Games, and try to promote the sport a little bit. And I also get on to some mental stuff that maybe you find pretty interesting, or maybe you don't. But sort of like my sense of humor. Whatever. I like it. So
take it or leave it.
Yeah, exactly.
No, that's awesome. Well, again, thanks for joining us, and looking forward to the World Games coming up this July in the shithole of Birmingham.
The apparent shithole of Birmingham. I didn't know this.
I can't speak from experience, but I do know one expert. So
Never been there.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting when people from other countries come in there. You definitely don't want to walk from venue to venue, so we'll see how that goes.
Man. Oh well. But yeah, again, check out the World Games. We're gonna have more competitors that qualified for Team USA on the show coming up. But yeah, you know where to find Grand Sumo Breakdown. Check us out on Twitter, Instagram, etc. Mac, why don't you hit us with that voicemail number?
805-613-7866. That's 805-613-SUMO.
Looking forward to seeing you wrestle again. Thanks for joining us, Andrew.
Thanks for having me. Y'all have a good day.
Yeah, you too.
You too.
Thank you for listening to Grand Sumo Breakdown. Until next time,
Throw your salt high
And keep moving forward.